I'm now going to walk you through a simple debugging example using the Eclipse IDE. This is a short program that outputs serialized objects as files, and then reads them in again, deserializes them, and prints them to the console. It starts off by creating an employee array of size 2. It creates the employee, adds him to the array, creates another employee, and adds her to the array. It then creates a serialization output object with an output method that serializes the object and creates a file. It then takes in the file using the serialization input object with an input method and prints that out to the console. So if we run the program, we can see that it actually deserializes John Smith twice, which shouldn't happen seeing as we have implemented in a way that there's John Smith and Mary Walsh as employees. So there could be a few possible bugs. Either John Smith is added to the array twice, either he's output twice, or else possibly he's been read in twice. So in order to resolve the problem, we're going to use the debugging system in the IDE. So we'll skip this counter method and object because it's unrelated and we don't need to debug for it, and we'll add a breakpoint to the employee array line. This will tell the program to stop at that line so that we can view the different variables currently in memory. So we'll come up to the debug button and click that. That'll bring us to the debugging perspective. So we have our code in the console, in the stack, and the variables currently in memory. There's 5 buttons that we'll normally use in this perspective. We'll use the resume button, which resumes from the current breakpoint, executing the code, and then stops at the next breakpoint. The terminate button, which ends the program and the debugging process. The step into button, which will step into the current line into the class that's related to it. The step over button, which will execute the line of code and move on to the next line, as well as the step return button, which will return us from when we've stepped into a class or method back to the original line. So now we're at this employee array line, which is about to be executed, and we don't really care how that works, so we're just going to step over that, and that creates the employee array with 2 null values initialized. So now we're brought on to where we create the first employee, John Smith. So we'll step over that, and we can see that the employee is created, John Smith, and all his details. Now we add him to the employee array, so we step over there, and we can see that employee ID 25 is added to the employee array, which is the same as John Smith. And now we're at the point where we create Mary Walsh. So we'll step over her, and we see that she's created correctly. And we'll add her to the array, so step over again, and we see that she is indeed added to the array, ID 449, and there she is. So now we're going to create the serialization output object, which contains this output method, So we'll step over that because we don't care about that. And we see that the object is created but it has no values. So now we're at the for loop that's going to iterate through the employee array. So we'll step over that to take us into the first iteration of that loop where I is equal to 0. And now we're at this serialization output method. So we'll step into that and see what's going on. So we see that it takes an employee argument, which is John Smith. So that's grand. So now we can use this step return button to come back out of that serialization output object, and we'll step over to get into the next iteration of the for loop where I is equal to 1, and we'll step into the output method, and we see that it has an employee argument, which is again John Smith. So from that we can see that the for loop isn't actually iterating over the employees. So looking at the output method, we can see here that employee or EMP actually relates just to John Smith. So that should actually be employee array I, taking each of the employees for the value I. And there we have John Smith and Mary Walsh. So that should be right. So if we save that and stop the debugging process, and we'll actually add in another breakpoint here to save us going through everything. So we'll press debug, and now we can use the resume button to bring us down to the next breakpoint, serialization out, and we'll step into that, and we can see the first employee is John Smith. Grand. Step return and step over to the next iteration where I is equal to 1, and step in, and we can now see the employee is Mary Walsh, who we want to be there. So that's grand. So we can now stop the process and move over to the Java perspective, and if we just want to run the process again, or program again, we can see that Mary Walsh and John Smith are correctly deserialized. Thank you.